chasing the night. We're living for the moment now, we're one with the world. I can't lose this feeling I get. My heart's in the right place, and so is my soul, yeah. I won't take no excuses for it. Love it, need it, live it. I feel like something's missing when I do not have it. I feel it in my bones, gotta find my space. These emotions on my face, taking a toll, I gotta pay it forward. I'll give it all that I can. No matter what, I won't let up. It's in my soul, it's in my blood, and I won't take no for an answer. If it don't hurt me, it makes me stronger. Yeah, what I won't let up. It's in my soul, it's in my blood, and I won't take it no more. I won't be there. Just leave it to me. I know what I need. You'll find if you see. And if you believe, you live and you breathe, you'll find the key. Lifting me, lifting you. Can't go alone, let's do by two. Doing this together, it's me by you. All through the night, all through the night. This is me, this is you. When we get together, we can all pull through. I don't ever wanna stop this groove. Let's get it right. Take it to the Lord, then take it to the grave. Listen to the wise man, tell me what to say. Listen to your heartbeat like it still bleed. A little bit of hope, yes, what we still need. Say a little prayer for the moment. Give what you got, just go in. Can't hold you back if you own it. Live your life like you're chosen. No matter what, I won't let up. It's in my soul, it's in my blood, and I won't take no for an answer. If it don't hurt me, it makes me stronger. You know what, I won't let up.
Oh, yeah, soon on Discord site.
Hello and welcome to RCI Racing. We are here bringing you the last few minutes of qualifying for the British DT3 single event that we are hosting today. Only British cars around Brands Hatch for 75 minutes. I am Nick Setnick, and I'll be bringing you the cameras and some commentary. Joining me in the box today is Josh. How you doing today, Josh?
I'm doing great. Thanks, Nick. Thanks for having me. It's looking to be a really good qualifying. There's some quick times being posted. Obviously, we have Egger in the Bentley number 126 going with the 123.1, which is pretty quick around here. Followed pretty closely by Macaulay in the number 18 Jaguar. I'm very closely behind him. We've got Bois in the. Sorry if I'm butchering the name there. In the number 88 Bentley. So two Bentleys in the top three. It's pretty cool to see.
Yeah, definitely. Actually, the Bentley is doing great around Brands Hatch. It is a excellent pick around here. Posts up those really fast lap times for 75 minutes. It's going to be a beast around this course. It's awesome to see a Jaguar up there with Macaulay, who likes to pick the underdog cars. I've noticed. He's been running the Ginetta in the GT4 races lately around here at RCI. Um, yeah, I mean, doing really well for himself in that Jaguar. Actually, that's going to be uh, Pietrzak? Oh wow, I totally tore that one up. Is actually going to be 2/10 faster than him, grabbing second place in the triple eight.
I know we're just saying the Jaguar was kind of an underdog car, but it's certainly not seeming that way from what we're seeing in the top three right now.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're seeing Egger still holding on to qualify, but we have a few more cars coming back around. Egger could actually secure pole position by a little bit here. He's going to cross the line and is not going to improve that time, but is going to hold on to pole position. But Macaulay could still have a chance here.
Oh, entirely. Yeah, it's worth noting that last lap was a 123.9, so it's still not far off considering I think there was traffic to contend with there as well. Um, no, it's looking very strong, and we've got a short wait until we go into the race. Nick, do you have any particular favorites for this one, or do you think it's anybody's game?
I have to say that I love how many McLarens are out on the track. Actually, the McLaren, not the strongest pick, especially in the pro split. A lot of people seem to not prefer it compared to something like the Aston Martin, which is just a reliable vehicle around most of the courses in ACC. But I mean, just a complete smattering of McLarens all over the board here. We see Stephen Wust in sixth place in the top ranked McLaren. And scrolling back around the map here, yeah, Egger with that 123.1 holding on to pole position with Pietzak, which is actually a new name. I haven't seen that name, I don't believe, recently in the Triple Eight Jaguar. This is everyone pulling in to the pits here, waiting for the grid lineup, and we'll be doing a rundown for you then. I have to say, I love the kind of pastel colors we're getting in the liveries today. Let me see if this is in the Jaguar. That's going to be the bright pink one, if I'm not mistaken.
I
Um,
think you might be right. Yeah.
oh no, sorry. That's
No.
Pietzak, and then 18 right next to him. So you have both the Jaguars hanging out together with those pastel colors. You can actually see that going up the row there. We were talking a little bit beforehand about Lebrec's livery choices in that bright highlighter yellow and orange accent in the McLaren that he picked up, the number 67. So that is going to be a excellent choice of colors for him as well, as we're actually going
Right.
to switch over to the grid. Higher angle here. So yeah, I
Can I
mean,
just say how well sorry. Can I just say how well I think those colors work as well? Obviously, you have the McLaren kind of orange with that as well, with the kind of yellow that works with like the McLaren P1. I think they released with as well in the MP4. So it's kind of like a hark back to recent McLaren colors and all in one livery, which is really cool.
Yeah, absolutely. And I like seeing bright colors because it's always menacing to have those like dark black liveries when you're getting chased down through the turns, kind of having a shadow follow you around the course. Um, Actually, speaking of that, it looks like it's going to be a little bit cloudy for our race today. We're going to have an 8 p.m. start for the 75-minute race. So that's actually going to bring the lighting down just a little bit as we'll be racing into the evening. Not quite nighttime, I don't believe. But yes, that will definitely make the race a little bit dark by the end of the 75 minutes.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting to kind of see what kind of challenges that's going to throw up, especially kind of going through the fast turns like I think it's Cleethorpes and going down Pilgrim's Drop down to Hawthorne Hill and through Hawthorns. It's going to be really interesting to kind of see because the track's already elevated, so it's already kind of difficult to sort of see what you're doing at the best of times if you're following traffic. So in lesser lighting, it's going to be really interesting to see how the drivers handle that today.
Yeah, absolutely. A race recently we had racing into the evening at Spa, and I really liked the effect of it. The drivers were starting in like sunset conditions and transitions into a pretty dark evening. So that's a lot of vision things that the drivers had to think about. They're converting their eyes over to only seeing a little bit ahead of them rather than the whole track. And it's interesting to see that transitioned through a 75-minute race like this, even though it is a sprint race. There's still that changing effect, that dynamic thing that they have to be thinking about. Um, and yeah, I mean, that adds a lot to the strategy. It's also interesting to only have British cars on the track. You're seeing again like this different mix of cars that we're not used to seeing. A couple of Jags up at the front. I'm really excited to see how they perform here. And again, like a lot of fun names. We actually have a couple of RCI staff down on the list, down in position 22, Mike Jones in that number 14 Aston, and Ted Edwards in the 95 Aston. Um, both seeing how they stack up against the pro guys.
Oh, completely. It's kind of it's really awesome to see them on the grid. It's awesome to see kind of where they're going to kind of come and how they're going to do. Obviously, there's some really fast people I recognize in here as well. Um, I remember Daly from the Thursday amateur races. He's got some pretty good consistent pace. And Walmouth as well, who I believe won the Silverstone event, the Thursday amateur event last week as well. So there's some, and he's in 12th as well. So that's definitely the opportunity to take that further and kind of convert on that and convert that into a top 10 at the very least.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, with 75 minutes, anything can happen. We have a lot of big names in here. But yeah, like you said, a lot of drivers from the Silver Split from our other events. So kind of getting a nice smattering of everybody up here in this lineup. So we'll be pulling out into the formation lap in about 1 minute. Track temperature is currently 19°C, with just a little bit of wind. And shouldn't be affecting our drivers too much. And it seems to be a pretty modest weather setting. The sun is out and there's no clouds in the sky. I'm just going into the evening nice and cool
I'd be
for some exciting racing around Brands Hatch today.
Yeah, I'd be very surprised if we get rain through this. As you said, the weather conditions looking great. The track temperatures looking stable, and it's yeah, as you said, it's going to be a really fun race. I mean, the track length is only 2.43 miles, so it's a relatively quick lap time in comparison to other tracks. So obviously it's still what's a 75-minute race. So there's still just as many opportunities to try and get past, but it's also got a really high speed section too. So it's gonna be interesting to see how these drivers kind of utilize slipstreaming and drafting and managing those braking zones going into that back section.
Yeah, absolutely. The fun thing about Brands Hatch, about it being a shorter sprint track like this, is it makes for very exciting racing, where like you kind of get a lot of strategy on a track like Spa, where there's just so many turns, so many sections people can really capitalize on. Brands Hatch is just going to be speed the whole time, wrapped around this tiny track in comparison. the endurance tracks in ACC and for the GT3 class. So, you know, it's going to make for some fun, exciting racing. That's why I love watching races at, say, Laguna Seca. Not just saying that because that is my hometown circuit. But you know, it's just I just like Sprint Cup. I like sprint tracks. You know, I think it just makes for fast, exciting racing. People are willing to make kind of take those chances, and the track is more accepting of it. You can see the cars weaving in and out of each other, pulling onto the formation lap, which is going to be much shorter than most other courses. Will be jumping into the race with the green flag much sooner than expected if we were following Spa or something. Because McCool is actually going to get a little bit of grass on there for himself. A interesting strategy to say the least, but I expect nothing less from McCooley, and I'm sure he's still going to put up some amazing times here. He's kind of sliding back the grid here. This is a McCooch in the 137 Aston in that bright white and with red accents. Looks pretty nice to me. Right behind him is Dustin Woost in that black McLaren, number 21, with Rupert in the silver McLaren just behind. And there's Lebrec in that yellow Tony the Tiger inspired livery in the 67 McLaren. So again, lots of awesome choices out on the track today.
Oh, entirely. I do think the McLaren is standing out to me as to being one of the best liveries here, although the two McLarens are so 80s, it's great. It's funny how you mentioned Laguna Seca being your home track, by the way, Nick, because this is mine. It actually isn't going to be too far for me from when I'm moving in September, so it's a little bit of national pride here for me.
Oh yeah, definitely. There's a lot of people that have been excited about the rumored and confirmed British track map pack for ACC that's going to be released very late this year, hopefully. A lot of people have been speculating what courses are on there, and yeah, just a lot of our English friends getting excited about those courses. Actually, we are going side by side, 2x2, up to the green line, and that's the green flag, and we're going to go into this race. Egger getting that early lead in that Bentley, just showing that raw power pulling into turn one here, and it's just going to be pulling away from Piatek here.
Yeah, seems like a relatively instant free turn one. It must be. It's nice to see. Egger's still keeping a good lead, and going into Druids, it seems that everything's okay as well, from what I can see.
Yeah, this is gonna be McCooley in third place with a few friends behind him sorting themselves out. Santos grabbing 5th position ahead of the McLaren behind him. And the rest of the grid looks to be shaking out pretty nicely here. Everyone behaving to their good standards. Trying to grab a camera that's a little zoomed out here. It's going to be Rupert and McCooch going side by side into this corner. That silver McLaren riding the inside line. Actually going to be grabbing some grass on the right-hand side, and it's going to allow McCooch to push ahead of him. And Rupert's going to have to drop back into this pack. They're going pretty tightly through this course. I mean, trying to find their lines here. We're going to jump with Woost and Lebrec right behind him. A lot of people seem to be grabbing a lot of grass here, trying to find the width of Brands Hatch. A lot of these drivers were saying Brands Hatch is definitely not their favorite course, as it's not a popular choice for the championships that we usually run, but we thought we'd run it for the British one-off here to see how people are doing into the British cars. Actually, we're just going to get a little bit sideways, and with Lebrec pushing, putting that pressure on his back wing there. We're actually going to jump on board with that, and that's going to be Lebrec on the left-hand side trying to push through, but Wush trying to be defensive and fight him off as we're going to be able to sneak past there. Again, lots of grass there. You're going to see the Aston in the distance behind with Mathis grabbing a lot of grass there. And Lebrec just going to get back in line here.
Yeah, it is a very fast, very thin course as well. As you say, it's very difficult to find the track width, especially at the speeds these guys are pushing. Seems that Egger is still in first, but I'm just looking down the order and seeing if there's any change-ups. It looks like everything's fairly clean so far. Obviously, Wurst grabbing a little bit more grass there on the curb. It's a very, very easy one to misjudge.
Yeah, absolutely. This is going to be Lebrec actually just going to jump back one car. This is Lebrec and McCooch back there in the 137 is going to be looking for an opening there as Lebrec grabs a little more dirt onto those tires. Seems to be the running strategy currently for this course, but I mean, just ready to pounce at any moment here. The fun thing with sprint courses is that they just really make for these opportunities. McCooch is going to go for that opening that opened up just a little bit. Lebrec's going to try to hold on to the inside line. And there's going to be a little bit of a touch actually right there. Some sparks flying as McCooch kind of tucks into the inside line. Is actually going to take it out from under Lebrec with an excellent pass right there.
Yeah, it looks like both drivers are going to be okay going through paddock. Going up to Druids, they're still fighting, which is great to see. The Aston finally makes its way through. And I think we've seen... I think that's gonna, yeah, that move stuck.
Yeah, definitely. That's going to be him sneaking away from here. We're actually going to jump up to 5th place. This is Santos under fire from Stephen Wust in that 11 McLaren, trying to hold him back. But that's going to be Wust actually getting a little bit sideways, losing a lot of time out of that corner there. And that's going to be Santos pulling away and getting a very secure gap for himself and holding on to 5th position as he pushes up to the likes of Bohr and the 88 Bentley up ahead of him. As far as that goes, actually Stephen Wust lost a lot of ground there, still spinning quite a bit, losing the back end, so that's going to be Dustin Wust right behind him with the likes of McCooch right behind that, so that's going to be a three-way battle for position 6 as they're coming back to the main straight.
Yeah, as you were saying there, if you push it a little bit too far and you get that dirt on your tires, it takes a little while to scrub that off, and around here where it's really, really high speeds, with not a lot of track width to kind of play with, it definitely is quite a big detriment. It seems to be the question to settle, and it looks like McCook in the Aston is pulling the move on West, and it has made it stuck through Druids.
Yeah, that's going to be another excellent pass from McCooch. That's going to be another solid pass. He snuck past Lebrec last lap and is now got his sights set on the likes of Stephen Wust in the front of him. So I think we're looking at a pretty solid contender for podium right here.
Oh, no, entirely. I think it's early to say at this point, but anything can happen. I mean, Wust and Santos both seem to make... Wust has gone completely white going through there. Again, that's dirt on the tyres as well, but I think at this point there's so many contenders. The back of the pack is starting, I think, to close up to the top 3, so at this point it could be anyone's round.
Absolutely, we're going to jump on board with McCooch right now, actually. It's going to be looking for another opening. That's going to be him sneaking past the likes of Stephen Wurst ahead of him, who made just too many mistakes getting too much grass and dirt on those tires. And McCooch pushing himself into 6th position. This guy is flying right now.
He's done an absolute charge to the top 3. Only Santos left to deal with up front, and then after Santos there is Bohr in the Bentley, and then it's a name to the top 3. Looking at my delta, it seems that Santos is catching Bohr just slightly, but Bohr is also catching up to the top 3 as well. So seems to be we're going to get a really nice pack going when we get there.
Absolutely. Just a little update from the likes of Egger and that 126 Bentley, putting a pretty solid gap for himself up in front of Piatek and that 888 Jaguar, just showing the raw power of this Bentley that can just push around Brands Hatch like it's nothing. So this is looking like a solid gap he's putting up for himself, and that's going to be something he uses to keep himself safe from the pack behind him. I mean, when you got someone like McCooch is just fighting for position, this is him in 5th place now. He actually worked himself past Santos, going to fly off the course there, just completely missed that turn there, like he didn't even turn enough for it. So this is going to be McCooch going into 5th position. Like he's getting a position a lap currently, which is a lot to say for a short course like Brands Hatch. So this is incredible run right now from McCooch in this 137.
Yeah, he's showing absolutely amazing race pace here. That was a 123.9 going across the line there. So very, very not far off what we're seeing qualifying times. But remember, guys, this is with a race setup, so slightly used tires at this point. I mean, we're we're not far into the race, but it's enough. You know, it's enough to kind of, once you have a bit of dirt on the tires and a little bit of wear accumulates, it does slow the car down. So it's really impressive to kind of see those kind of lap times in the race. It's worth saying as well that Egger's fastest time was a 1:23.3, which I think is only 2/10 off of his qualifying time, which is absolutely staggering when you consider it's a race setup.
Yeah, absolutely,
But
and has the fuel load as well, so that's going to be an interesting development. We're currently following Mathis and Lebrec, and Mathis just kind of fought his way past Lebrec there in that number 5 Bentley in that lime green one. He's going to go super wide here and miss that turn. Lebrec's going to capitalize on that and take that position right back out from under him. And that is going to be a huge mistake from Mathis, and just get back in line and try to work that grass up. But you can see how much pace you lose when you're going loose. Actually, he's going to go completely sideways out of that corner and lose it completely. This is going to be a little bit, if I can catch a replay of this, this is going to be him. Looks like he's just trying to gain some ground back and just loses it around that kink and is going to throw it sideways into the grass, getting a little bit of light damage on there and spins himself out onto the course.
yeah,
That is going to be a tough blow for Mathis there, dropping down to 14th place.
Yeah, that's kind of what we're saying though. This track's really unforgiving. If you push it just that little too hard, it can be really beneficial, but you push it a little bit further than that and you always risk running a rear tire off the grass and spinning it like that, sadly. But his pace seems good, and I have no doubt he'll be able to catch the cars up ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. We're back on board with Dustin Wurst, who's got Santos at his rear there. That actually might have been a pass from Dustin, but I mean, there's a lot of pressure coming up from behind him. A little bit of touches on the back as they are fighting into these corners. He's going to be swinging out wide again. Try to grab the inside corner for the next turn here and try to get some speed on him. And is going to be actually be pushed wide a little bit. And Lebrec is going to be in the back trying to capitalize on that huge mistake, and Lebrec's going to get in the middle of this, fight his way through here, and this is an excellent three-way battle for this position, trying to fight his way past that car. You can see them just wiggling back and forth. There's going to be a huge touch inside that corner twice, and Lebrec's not going to be happy about that, flashing his lights at him, saying that that was not the line that I wanted you to take, and I had the pace going through there with just a few taps out of that corner. That is going to be an interesting turn of events there, but they're going to get back in line and do it for another lap.
Yeah. And obviously Wurst has the ability to capitalize on this as well. Like, the more these guys ahead of him fight, the more times, you know, the more time that they lose. Flashes of sparks coming from the Leblec's car going through paddock there. But the more that those guys fight, the more of an advantage that Wurst technically has. Obviously, nobody wants to see contact in front of them, but it's obviously a possibility, and that'll be going through Wurst's mind as well right now, I can imagine. It's a really, as the kids say, a very spicy place to be right now. But Wurst has a really front row seat to the battles that are going to that battle ahead of him. The other Wurst, S-Wurst, is also making up really good ground in 6th, heading up to 5th. And McCook is... again, he's only less than a 1/10 of a second away from both from my time split here.
Yeah, actually, there's going to be Bohr actually flying off the course there, and Makuch is going to grab 4th position here. That's going to be another position game for this 137 Aston, who is putting down an incredible race, actually just capitalizing on the huge mistake Bohr just made, throwing himself into the sand trap there in the 88 Bentley, and that is going to be Makuch just flying into the distance ahead of him. And Bohr cannot be happy about that, and as Makuch continues to climb up this board here, just incredible pace from him, and he's just capitalizing on every mistake that every other driver is making, which actually there's been a lot so far, especially for the pro split. I'm really surprised by how many times that they've just grabbed some grass or just thrown it straight into the sand pit without anybody even around them. So Brands Hat's really having its way with these drivers today.
Yeah, it's a very short course, but it is a very, very challenging one. Looking at the deltas for the best times as well, to give an update on Makuch's performance, his best time so far is a 1:23.9, but in 3rd, the Jaguar of Macaulay, his best lap time's a 1:24.1, so he's a good 3/10 of a second quicker on the best laps. So if he can kind of keep that consistency up, it shouldn't be long at all until he actually makes it to the top 3.
Yeah, absolutely. We're going to actually jump on board with Joe McCooley here with the McLaren back behind him. I believe my list hasn't updated quite yet. I believe that's a back marker, actually. That's lost a lot of pace back in the back there. They're going to be sneaking past to get past the likes of him. Actually, that's going to be the number 71 McLaren of Rupert down in 23rd position. As our leaders have already caught up with our back markers. So just goes to show how short this course is, and if you're making an early mistake, you're actually going to already be blue flagged only a few laps into this race. We're only less than 15 minutes into this race, actually, so that is pretty impressive that our leaders have already caught the back of the pack. I mean, with only having a Pro and Am split, you know, the drivers that would usually sort themselves into like a silver split or Pro Am, you know, might have tucked themselves up into this race here for the Pro split. So I wouldn't be too surprised if there's kind of more or less 2 races going on in this split today for this 75-minute race around Brands Hatch.
Yeah, we're going to definitely see a gap in performance, I think, but it's also worth noting that in the back end of the field, that Rupert and Wurst have already done their pit stops, so they can technically carry on to the rest of the race now, where everyone else has to make that mandatory stop. That is another factor that can throw this race into some uncertainty. Rupert's pace is not too far off. The pack leaders, actually. He's not too far off. Definitely not far off at all in comparison to the cars ahead. And he is catching the number 22 of Kroll, Kroll's Bentley in the 197 very quickly. So it's going to be interesting to kind of see what battles are happening at the back there. But going back to the Jaguars at the front, of Macaulay and Pietzak, Macaulay is closing that gap. It's really kind of cool to see these older Jaguars kind of coming around this track in the technical kind of 80s. It's so I like to say the 80s inspired liveries that they are. I know we keep going back to that, but they are very noticeable. If you see one of those in your rear view, you're definitely going to notice it.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, they're using these bright colors in this lighting too. I think it'll be really interesting when the lights start to go down over Brands Hatch. I'd say about at the 30-minute mark or so, we'll be starting to see some pretty dark skies, and these highlighter liveries are going to be really prominent in that lighting, I believe.
Oh, entirely. And I could imagine in Pietzak's position right now, he's glancing at that mirror occasionally. And with Riccardi also having the lights on, it makes the car stand out even more. And when you're trying to focus on nailing this apex into paddock, because it's a blind apex, it's kind of difficult to spot the turning point. It's very easy to run way too wide onto the gravel on the left-hand side. But so when you have this Technicolor flash in your rearview mirror to kind of almost forcibly distract your eyes looking to that and take your eyes off the road, that's a potential tactic, I think. Only pro strats here, guys.
Absolutely. Actually, we're on board with Mike Jones right now. Actually just made a solid mistake there and is going to lose 2 positions to both of those McLarens there, and is going to push him back into 17th position. Actually going to be a little bit of contact on the back of Banks there, as he lost a little bit of ground. But again, just Brands Hatch just having its way with these drivers. These little mistakes can cost you a position or 2. You know, just grabbing a little bit of dirt, throwing it on these tires, and you know, kind of doing the safe thing. You know, you want to keep the car pointed the right direction, but you know, that's going to sacrifice a lot of speed, especially on a course like Brands Hatch, where speed is so important to get around this tight little course.
That's it. You can definitely see in the disparities in lap times between the lower side of the grid. I'm seeing a 128.4 as a best lap from number 86 in the my timing sheets are all a little bit skew, but that is Mr. Grada in the. I'm probably butchering that massively. But it's the 1 minute 28 in comparison to the 1 minute 23 from Egger up front. But speaking of that, Egger's 1 minute 23.3 best lap time is still 7/10 ahead of the 124 from Pietzak and in second in the Jaguar. So I think that Egger is pulling away at the front there.
Yeah, according to my uh, board here, I mean, he's already put a pretty solid gap up for himself. He's currently 8 seconds ahead of both the Jaguars back behind him. So I think Egger's kind of trying to walk away with this. You know, we'll be coming down to a little bit of pit strategy here, but I mean, if he can keep that pace going in that Bentley, I mean, that Bentley can just push around Brands Hatch like nobody's business. So this, I mean, this is looking like a pretty solid win for Egger if all things go to plan. But you know, as we've seen, you know, Brands Hatch being a little bit cruel to our drivers today, so you know, he could be you know, comfortable coming around the course and grab a little bit of grass at some point, and that could cost him a lot of time. And there's definitely some great pace coming out from the two Jaguars behind him, and a lot of great drivers behind the wheel. So, you know, this is going to be him passing into the back markers. Honestly, yeah. I mean, from what we've seen lately with the GT3 and GT4 mixed class races, backmarkers play a huge level of strategy for these drivers, especially when you need to pass a lot of cars all at the same time. Now, when it's in the same class like this, you know, it's not as severe. But we've seen some pretty interesting things happen with people getting stuck behind GT4 cars going into the wrong turn at the wrong time, and losing a lot of time, especially when they have pressure from behind, you know, pushing on them, you know, waiting for them to make that mistake or just get caught up in something that they can't control. So that's going to be another level of strategy with Brands Hatch being, you know, with a grid this size, I would not be surprised that backmarkers play a little bit of role in some overtakes in this race today.
Oh no, absolutely, entirely. One thing I noticed in the 6 Hours of Barcelona event that we did, is that when you have a car coming up behind you and you have to kind of yield to let them through, it's really, you can really, if you play, as you say, you can really play with strategy. You can let them by in like a really kind of safe area, like coming down the pit straight here. And sure, you might lose a little bit of time to the guy that you're letting by, but so is the guy up ahead of you as well. That if he's not as fortunate to let the guy past in on the straight, and if he has to kind of yield on a corner, that can cost him a lot more time than what it's just cost you. So there is strategy to be had in being lapped around such a short course as well. And as you say, we've got you got 24 entries at the moment on a 2.4 mile course for 75 minutes. So I'd expect to see a lot of cars getting lapped at least once here, especially with the pace that Egger's moving at the moment. As we were saying before, Brands Hatch is a sprint track. It requires a lot of focus, and I can imagine that Egger is in. I can imagine he's relaxing a little bit in there. I mean, that's a pretty big gap that he's got, but he's a showcase of how much kind of focus and respect you have to give a course like this. If you just kind of get your head down, get into that mindset, keep that momentum going, keep that flow going, you know, you got to keep setting consistent lap times, and he seems to be setting consistent 123s, which is on par with qualifying times. But I'm not seeing any other driver down the grid setting it a 1 minute 23. So he's running away with it at the moment.
Yeah, the Bentley is showing a lot of great pace around here. We're actually on board with Carl Mathis right here in the number 5 Bentley in that kind of lime green, highlighter green color there. But that is going to be the McLaren behind him. That's actually going to be a back marker to him, Oppenheisen in the 42 McLaren. This is going to be Mathis just trying to find some pace here and get caught back up to the top 10, hopefully. With the couple of Astons that are ahead of him. Jump back around the map a little bit. This is going to be more in here in the 138 Aston. Slightly under fire from Matcha in the 404 McLaren in that kind of sky blue orange accent there. Looking pretty nice there. But yeah, you know, people are kind of shaking out into their positions for a little bit. Not seeing any too many crazy passes or anything happening. We're going to see a couple of people start pulling into the pits, actually. But yeah, this is going to be the 404 McLaren. Again, just waiting for any mistake to happen, and it seems to happen a lot here at this course. And these pro-level drivers can really capitalize on any little miscalculation that any other driver makes. So this is going to be the 404 just waiting for an opportunity to kind of pounce and take the position back from him for 7th position here.
Oh, totally. We have Bo coming out of the pits now as well. He has a little bit of damage on the front of his car, so I'm wondering if we've missed a little bit of contact in that last lap. I wonder if that was the reason for the pit, because I'd expect to see the drivers pit around about halfway, maybe just before, just after, depending on the strategy. So it's interesting to see how early he's come in.
Yeah,
Yeah,
definitely. I mean, you know, we've seen it a lot actually lately. We've been doing a lot of 75-minute races. Seems to open up a lot of pit strategies for the drivers. I mean, we've seen drivers pull into the pits way early, earlier than we would expect. But you know, they like to talk about it later in chat and say, you know, it's just I was caught up in a 2, 3, 4-way battle, and I just didn't want to deal with it. Didn't want to get caught up in a in a situation or an incident and lose my race. So I'm just going to do that as a little bit of a connection issue there. Yeah, I mean the two McLarens here. This is going to be Steve Banks and Higgins behind him. The two Steves and the two McLarens fighting for 14th position currently.
yeah, that's a 4-car train going into paddock. That's looking a little bit spicy, but it's looking like it's going to. Looks like it's going to be a pretty fair battle. We have in 8th place, we've got Mattia really pushing Moren, going through the back of the track there, coming through the back turns. Mattia's just going to get a little bit of dirt on the tyres there, but I think that was no, it was a bit of lag on my end, but they didn't touch. But it seems like Mattia is falling back after it.
It looks like there was might have been a little bit of a ping issue there, you know, trying to fight his way up to that position and then just kind of backed off, looking like that. You know, you don't want to get caught up in a situation where you cause contact on their side when it wasn't contact on your side, something that we've seen before. So, you know, kind of just playing safe, you know, just, you know, wait for that opening and hope that that shakes out for him. Ironically, racing for a Connection Lost Racing team, you know, trying to play his way into that meta, which is an interesting strategy, but not one that we encourage around here at RCI. So hopefully this shakes out to be a clean overtake eventually, if or it can open up a opportunity here out of Morin here. Also, Morin's had a excellent race as well. We've seen him pull off a few pretty satisfying overtakes as well. I mean, things happen so quickly around here at Brands Hatch. You know, just because it is such a small track, you know, the width of the course really plays into a strategy where if you're going to go for an overtake, you've got to you know, find that spot and go for it, because the gates open and close much quicker than on some other courses.
Oh yeah, you really have to let the car ahead know that you're in that spot and what your intentions are very, very quickly. Looking back down the grid in 13th, spectating Banks, we've got the Aston of Edwards in front and the McLaren of Higgins behind, and that's a 3-car train going through the Sheen curve, heading down towards Clearways, and again, that's I'm seeing blue flags waved at the side of the track there, so I think that we might be seeing a car coming up behind pretty quickly. I'm not seeing anything on the stream.
Yeah, it doesn't look like anything is going to be happening right now, at least for these drivers here. This is going to be Banks still looking for an opportunity from Edwards, going to be grabbing a little bit of curb there, as he's going to be just kind of just looking down the sights and waiting for that opportunity like we've been talking about. You know, as the lighting around here is getting a little bit darker and darker. I think about the 30-minute mark we'll start seeing some lights kind of take some precedence here. Riding on board with Steve Banks for YRA Racing in that number 16 McLaren. Gonna go just a hair sideways into that one, but you know, trying to find that opportunity with Ted Edwards ahead of him. And this is looking like about where the battles are sitting for this race right now. You know, everyone kind of comfortable with their pace. Egger just, you know, running away with it currently. This is going to be Banks grabbing some dirt there and losing that that gap on him. But yeah, I mean, you can see right there just how much ground you lose when you get grass up on these tires. Like that is just death to these cars, you know. So you know, you really want to be fighting for the pace, but not pushing to the edges of the track. Actually, he's going to do it again for us, just as a demonstration. I really appreciate it, Banks, but I really think you should be focusing on the road here to get ahead of Ted Edwards.
Yeah, driving lessons around Brands Hatch is all well and appreciated, but yeah, he is losing a little bit of ground to Higgins. Can I just say, one thing they did really well here is when you look at the cars going down the straights, you can see the glow in the exhausts, and the attention to detail there is amazing. And that's, as you said, as we start losing the light, that's just going to become more pronounced and so much more beautiful.
Yeah, that's actually on screen. That's going to be Santos making a pretty solid pass on Lebrecht here, but then he's going to lose it again with a lot of pressure from Lebrecht on the outside there, pushing in. It's going to be a little bit of oh my gosh, not quite contact, but just, I mean, we're talking millimeters from the back of Santos there. Lebrecht trying to fight for this position back after he lost it to him. And that's going to be Lebrecht dropping back just a little bit from a little bit of a scrap with him, and Lebrecht's actually going to pull into the pits there and let Santos have it, but an excellent pass from Santos there.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see how this undercut actually works out for Lebrecht. That was a pretty dicey battle going on there, but I think Santos will be appreciative of the clear air in front of him. I think that's another thing to consider with Brands Hatch being such a high-speed circuit. You do have to contend with the dirty air of the car in front. You can expect your car to understeer a little bit when following, and again, that makes positioning the car for overtakes to be a little bit more difficult.
Actually, jumping up to the front here, this is McCooley closing that gap on Pietzak in the 888 Jaguars. This is two Jaguars battling for second position currently. And McCooley has been slowly closing this gap on up on them, who has actually gained a little bit of ground on Egger ahead of them, only 5.4 seconds ahead. I mean, still a solid gap to contend with, but you know, they're not quite losing him. So you know, there could still be a little bit of a fight for first place here. But I mean, Egger really running away with it in that Bentley. As we're gonna jump on board with Piet. I'm sorry. McCooley, who's actually behind, trying to fight in these two Jaguars. Again, just looking for those opportunities, but I mean, he has been closing the gap. He's right on his back, so any little mistake could lead to an overtake here, and it would be interesting to see how that shakes up for our two Jaguar drivers that have been doing really well for themselves when that is, you know, not a popular car to choose compared to the other options, but when you are limited to the British class of makes, it seems to be doing pretty well for them, at least around Brands Hatch.
I just saw one of the blue McLarens come off at Clearways going onto the Brabham Straight. I'm not quite sure who that was. I'm flicking through my timesheets. So yeah, bear with me just a moment, sorry.
Yeah, all good. So yeah, we're just we're following kind of the battle up here. I mean, nothing else much going on. Ted Edwards still trying to fight off the likes of Banks behind him, who's been slowly closing this gap, but still hasn't quite found the opportunity with Higgins pretty close behind him as well. So I mean, we're looking for a 3-stack here for 12th position. Ted Edwards holding strong in that Aston Martin, you know, the strong, reliable car that a lot of our drivers like to rely on in that RCI livery, which I can happily say I had a part in design. We are going to come around to release the GT4 pack for the RCI liveries, but yeah, I really like the color scheme that we decided on with the gold accent. I think it really is it's a color scheme that not a lot of people are using, and we kind of have that matte finish on it, kind of makes it kind of glow with that nice satin finish. But enough talking about me. Let's talk about the race. We have the two McLaren. Steve Banks still looking for... Actually, that's going to be Ted Edwards going really wide here. That's going to be the mistake that he was waiting for. Steve Banks capitalizing on that, kind of take the outside curve. But Ted Edwards still just holding on to so much pace there. Even with the dirt on his tires, he's going to be trying to clear that up. And this is going to be Banks pushing out to the outside again. Kind of try to take him out in turn 1. And Ted Edwards is going to be accidentally defensive especially with the pressure from behind from the likes of Higgins. So that's going to be a lot to be thinking about. Trying to make sure that you're keeping a clean line, but also trying to find a way to get around Ted Edwards, who's been just holding on to his position with some serious fervor. So that's going to be Banks tucking back in, grabbing a little bit of dirt for himself, and Ted Edwards sneaking away with it, and is going to live to fight another day. Actually, Banks is going to go a little bit sideways out of there. There's going to be Higgins capitalizing on that mistake, and Higgins going to take the inside curve. They're going to go side by side down the back straight here. Two McLarens with pretty similar liveries, if I do say so. And this is going to be Higgins fighting his way into 13th position, with Banks dropping back, and that's going to be an excellent overtake from Higgins.
I was just about to say, you can really feel the frustration from Banks. Even when he was just behind Edwards, he's using every possible inch of track to try and find a way to get that nose alongside and try and get that car through, but unfortunately it just hasn't quite worked, and he just overpushed just that little bit more, but hopefully he'll be able to catch up, and we'll see a bit more of that kind of battles as well. That's exactly what we enjoy here.
Yeah, absolutely. This is going to be Carl Matheson, that number 5 highlighter Bentley, trying to get some ground up on Lebrec, who has lost a surprising amount of positions. I mean, Lebrec is definitely a star-level racer, and seems to have been just getting passed up by these little mistakes that he's been making in that 67 McLaren. And other people just really being in position to capitalize on that. So Lebrec holding on to the bottom of the top 10. But will be interesting to see what happens here. Mathis still has to take his mandatory pit stop, and Lebrec has already taken his. So, I mean, Lebrec's going to jump up the order here, as we're actually going to check over here. Yes, everybody from position 1 to 9 has not taken their pit stop. So Lebrec taking that early pit stop is going to shake him out into a pretty good position, where he's going to be fighting for, I would wager, top 5, top 6, once everyone pulls into the pits.
Yeah, I mean, from what I'm seeing, the pit stop here doesn't seem to take overly too long, of course, unless you have damage, which is so easy to pick up around here. So the other cars shouldn't lose too much time, but obviously any time stopped is detrimental. It does also seem like the two Jaguars up front of Pietzak and Macaulay are still really, really close, and Makuk seems to also be catching as well, so the top three, there's no certainty in the top 3 right now.
Yeah, absolutely. There's going to be Mike Jones pulling into the pits because he had a bit of pressure from behind and decided that he's going to take his mandatory pit stop at about the 40 minutes left mark, and that'll be shaken out for him.
Just looking through the order now, we've got obviously Oppenheiser is it Oppenheiser? I can't. I'm butchering names today. I apologizing.
Well,
it was his laps, but he also had quite a bit of contact earlier as well. When I said there was a blue McLaren that went off going onto paddock, it was Oppenheiser, and he took his pit stop right afterwards, and it seemed like he had a fair bit of damage, so he's a little bit behind. But hopefully he will be able to catch up to the rest of the pack.
Yeah, I mean, the thing with a track like Brands Hatch, I mean, if you do pick up some damage, I mean, you're going to be losing a lot of ground just because, the course is a lot shorter than the other, GT tracks that we see in ACC. So, picking up, 30, 45 seconds of damage, I mean, like, that's going to push you, possibly to the bottom of the grid. So, if he did pick up that much damage, I mean, that's going to be a huge blow to him.
Because losing 2/10 of lap around this track because of it being so short is actually quite detrimental. We've got Lebrec coming into Druids, really catching up to the number 6 Aston of Texera. Again, apologies for names. And it looks like Texera's in the V12 Aston, which we don't seem to see very often. And Lebrec's really close at the gap, making the most of those fresh tyres. It's really close as he's going on the inside. It's making a pass. And there's contact, and they've just gone into the wall. It seems to be that Texera got off better than that, but...
Grab an
So,
instant replay here. I didn't have the best camera angle to see what happens. It looks like Lebrec's going to take the inside corner here, and the VTOLs are going to turn into him and throw him into the wall there. Oh, Lebrec's not going to be happy about that one. And let me see here. Actually, Lebrec has retired from the race from that contact. That's going to be a huge blow to Lebrec there. Already not having the best race just from the overtakes that he was losing positions, and then just to get thrown off the course like that's a rough go.
no, that's a
So
shame. He was in a really strong position from a strategy point of view as well. You can feel the frustration there for absolutely certain. But unfortunately, that is racing, and sometimes these things do happen. It's very unpredictable, and it's kind of why we do it sometimes. Sometimes it's the best thing in the world, sometimes it's the worst, and sometimes it bites you.
yeah, definitely a tough blow to see that. We're going to jump up with our leader currently, Egger, in that 126 Bentley. Getting himself caught up into some blue flag cars ahead of him, and trying to fight for, just some space to keep up the pace that he's had. Again, with when you're only in a GT3 race like this, the other cars are moving at a similar pace to you compared to when it's GT4, and they're moving quite a bit slower. So not as serious, but you could be getting caught up in some traffic, and I wouldn't be surprised to see Egger lose a little bit of time if he's gonna have a bunch of back markers up ahead of him. When he's had such excellent pace so far.
It's going to be really scary seeing those Jaguars kind of stare you down. But I think they've also made their stop too, because in number 2 we've got Santos in the Aston, still yet to make the stop. So is Egger actually, so maybe the Jaguars can get the undercut on Egger coming up. Both have made the stop, and they're both running in P6 and 7, so they haven't lost too many positions. And the cars ahead of them are still yet to make it. In fact, Mattia in the McLaren 404 has just made their stop as well, so the Jaguars will make a place back there.
Yeah, that is interesting. I wonder if they planned that earlier. There's like, hey, we're the 2 Jaguars. Let's go ahead and pull into the pits together, and see if that was a strategy. But maybe it was just something they just happened to be, kind of going side by side, and pulled into the pits about the same lap that they had for each other's pit strategy. So it is interesting to see this. They're right back at it here, fighting for now 5th position, but that is going to shake out pretty quickly here as people pull in for their pit stops, pulling in past the back marker here.
Oh, absolutely. It's worth noting as well that Santos is putting in some really quick times as well. There's hardly anything separating the best laps between number 2 and 3, and even 4 even, with a 125.14, 125.12, and a 125.36, so there's really not a lot of difference in pace. It's going to be kind of interesting to see if these positions are kind of going to stay the same, or if these drivers can keep this consistency up. But as I predicted earlier, this top 3 isn't going to be as predictable as maybe one would think.
No, I would be not at all surprised if there's a little bit of back and forth between the 2 Jaguars with the 888 and the 18. Makuli has proved himself time and time again to be an excellent driver, and Pietzak, sorry, had a really excellent qualify. Was able to get a couple tenths on him and take the 2nd position from him on the starting grid. So Makuli is not going to be happy about that, but I mean, both of them showing excellent pace in those 2 Jaguars, kind of the, I would say, kind of the underdog on this grid, in comparison to like the Bentleys.
I'm sorry to interrupt you there, Nick. Santos just kind of went a little bit too wide, going round the side of Texira's Aston, catching up, obviously, with him being a lapped car. It's allowed Rupert to kind of pull ahead just a tiny little bit. And I think both cars lost out ground there. I can't imagine how frustrating that would be for Santos, but it looks like he's taking the opportunity to pull into the pits and get that mandatory stop done.
Yeah, the nice thing is when something like that happens, you know, and you still have a mandatory pit stop, you know, you can pull in and kind of, you know, shake off the dust and say, hey, you know what, got another 30 minutes of racing to do, you know, let's try to keep it clean and, you know, kind of, you know, always survive the race. That's what I like to say, since I'm a, you know, below rookie level driver. That's why I'm usually in the comms box broadcasting, because I am not a great driver, but you know, it's fun. I like to do it every once in a while. But you know, these drivers can really use that strategy. You know, they have the pace, and if they get caught up in a battle they don't want to be in, pull into the pits and shake it up for next time.
Oh, entirely. And down in 14th, we've got Edwards chasing down Van Rooyen, and both in the Astons, the 95 and the 77 respectively. He's making still a good gap between the two, but it seems like it is closing down a little bit lap by lap. It'll be interesting to see how that develops. And it's interesting to note as well that a lot of these cars have now done their mandatory pit stop. So it, right now, strategy doesn't come into play anymore. As interesting as it can be, sometimes it's fun just to watch an out-and-out sprint race between several drivers in a group. And it leads to some very unpredictable results. Egger's still yet to make that mandatory stop. I can only imagine he's trying to pull up enough time to make a stop and still come out in first position ahead of Bietzak. Macaulay running in third in the Jaguar. They've made back to the top three. Santos made his stop, but he's only half a second behind. Mathes in the Bentley, who I think remember spun in the early stages of this race, and he's made it back up to fifth, but still has that stop to make. McCook in sixth, Higgins in seventh. Higgins also having a stop to make. You have Woost in the McLaren in 8th, Boer in the Bentley in 9th, and Mathieu in 10th. So there's your top 10, guys.
Absolutely, we got 30 minutes left of racing with just a few more mandatory stops coming in from the two Bentleys, which is come to be known for the Bentleys. You know, they can last quite a long time out on the course. You know, so, you know, I'm not too surprised seeing the two Bentleys being the ones that are delaying their mandatory pit stop, just because it's something they don't really need to do. Egger, you know, having excellent pace up at the front, you know, maintaining this gap currently. Actually, he's quite a ways ahead of most people, even with the mandatory stop.
I was about to say, I think he's lapped most of the field now. Including, it won't be long now until he's coming up to the two Jaguars. So he's way ahead right now. He's still a lap ahead of the Jaguars on line split times at least. He's just overtook Mathes and lapped to Mathes. So Mathes is running in fifth, so that's pretty high up.
Absolutely, this is going to be jumping back to Morin and Wust in the 138 Aston and 11 McLaren respectively. Stephen Wust, you know, having a pretty much closed this gap here, and they can't rely on pit stops to shake out of this, so this is going to be Morin under fire from Wust, currently for 11th position. So they'll be seeing how this shakes out, and Wust looking again just for an opportunity to kind of pounce. As we've seen enough times this race, you know, Brands Hatch kind of having its way with our drivers, even though this is the pro level split. These are excellent skilled drivers, but Brands Hatch being the tight course that it is, I mean, just a little bit of grass can cost you a lot of time, especially when you have a pro level driver behind you, you know, that can really capitalize on that.
That's it. You know, it's all well and good saying that these drivers are pro level, but pressure is still pressure. Yes, pros can deal with it better than, say, the silvers, amateurs, and rookies. But that doesn't mean to say they don't feel it. And when you're feeling pressure, anything can happen. You know, it only takes going in half an inch too wide, and as we saw from the Bentley earlier, it's enough to kind of bring the car around.
Absolutely, especially in the GT3 course. As you know, with the GT4 pack being released, you know, we've seen that the GT4s can really just eat these curves for lunch, and it doesn't really bother them that much. But in the GT3s, we switch back to them, and you know, just going off course just a little bit can really cost you, or even throw the car around, like you mentioned. So, you know, there's a lot more. I guess it's just more strict driving in the GT3 class. You know, it just those little mistakes can just really hurt you way more than the GT4s.
Oh, entirely. We just saw Moren go a little bit wide as well, with Wurst making that overtake and making it stick. It was made it pretty easy work, but Moren is starting to close the gap up again, and it's not far up the road till the cars ahead either. I don't know if that's traffic or if that's fighting for position, but no, it looks like it's traffic. But even still, that can throw a pretty spicy chili into this mix.
Yeah, definitely. This is going to be riding on board with Morin, who just got passed up by the likes of Stephen Wust in that number 11 McLaren. Going to be going a little bit unsteady into that corner and gaining on him again in this one and closing that gap down. You know, based on their paces, I mean, Stephen Wust last lap had about a little over a second on Morin's pace, so it is not surprising that he's ahead of him currently, you know, kind of fighting for pace at this point. So kind of that clean overtake, going to get past the traffic pass there with the blue flag waving on the left-hand side. But yeah, I mean, you know, Stephen was having solid pace and securing himself 11th position currently.
Yeah, Santos is coming up to so back market car. So no, it's not. No, it's not. Forgive me. That's going into paddock. Santos catching up with McCook. Obviously, McCook started. He had that charge in the first in the opening laps of this, making up like a place a lap, which is, as we said before, that's pretty. It's pretty kind of amazing to see, and it's kind of amazing to see as we get into we're past halfway now. Seeing McCook one place away from a podium, that's really nice to see. It's been some amazing driving there. I can imagine going through his mind right now. He's just in a frantic push just to try and keep Santos off of his back, to try and catch up to the two Jaguars up ahead. He's only 8.8 seconds behind, which, when there's still 25 minutes left to go, that's a decent amount of time to make something happen. The two Jaguars seem to be really close still. I think they've been close all race.
Actually, not to cut you off, but it looks like McCooley's actually managed to get himself into second place past the likes of the AAA Jaguar. So that is going to be a bit of a shakeup that happened in the last lap or two. So yeah, new development. Like you said, podium is not going to be predictable for this race, especially if you have someone like McCooch with the pace that he's shown this entire race. I mean, he could be contending for it. I mean, especially if there's some mistake. I mean, I'm not wishing that on the two Jaguar drivers that have been absolutely solid this entire race. But, you know, Cook's been showing that excellent pace and could be trying to contend with them the next 25 minutes.
Oh, and I definitely see him at least having a chance of catching up if he just keeps his consistency up. Looking at the lap times and the deltas, he's not that far off lap times. Like previous lap, 124.8 from McCook and 124.5 from Pietzak. So very similar pace. I see that in the realms of being able to catch up to some degree. Best lap as well isn't too far off with the 23.8 and the 23.9 respectively. So running a little bit off pace, but not by much. Definitely within the realms of being able to catch up here.
Yeah, we're jumping back on board with Stephen West, who's currently under fire from Morin behind him. Was trying to find some pace on the main straight there, was side by side into turn one. And Stephen West was able to grab the inside of that corner, but Morin's going to go for it again and try to tuck in. There's going to be a little bit of a contact between the two of them. Try to fight that off, and Morin's going to wait for him, doing the respectable thing. Did not want to launch him off the course and be an unclean overtake. So it's going to be him dropping back and saying that is not how I want to take this position from you. So Wuss is going to get a little bit of a gap to work his way ahead of him.
Now, it's really awesome seeing sportsmanship like that. Obviously, it's all too easy when you're fighting for a position like this. It's all too easy to let the adrenaline kind of take over. Wuss will be grabbing a little bit of dirt on the left-hand side there, but it's so easy to let the adrenaline take over and just try and make it work by any means. So it's really nice to see Morin falling back there. I can't imagine it'd be long until he's right back in that tailpipe of Wust.
Absolutely. So we're seeing Cougar now in the 137 Aston. His last lap was a 124.738, which is 0.3 off of the pace from the two Jaguars ahead of him. So, you know, fighting for pace, that's going to be the really big thing. You know, his fastest lap being a little over a 10th below the two Jaguars ahead of him. So, he might be able to find some pace here, especially if the Jaguars are fighting back and forth, losing a little bit of time, and that little bit of time is all it would take to try to close this gap. I mean, he's 10 seconds behind, so that's going to be an uphill battle for him, especially with only 23 minutes to go. But I really believe in this guy. He's had an excellent race, and I think he really deserves the position that he gets at the end of it, just from how he's been driving and how he's been able to make these clean overtakes and fight his way up the pack.
Oh, absolutely. I think from all the drivers we've seen, for me personally, I think McCook has been the most impressive. Just in terms of consistency as well as the overtakes. I know he's a little bit off pace with the Jaguars in front, but when they start fighting, especially now we're losing the light as well. Obviously, when these two cars start fighting, that obviously their average lap time is going to go down, and that could be the opportunity McCook needs just to start. Kind of if he stays at the pace he's at now, it could be the opportunity he needs just to try and catch up.
And on screen, you're going to see Bohr in that Bentley is just going to rip around the McLaren of Higgins like he wasn't even moving. I mean, it looks like he just gave that position up, just, kind of accepting the Bentley had the pace coming off the main straight. Just that roaring Bentley is going to roar into Sector 1 and take that position like the McLaren wasn't even moving. So that was a pretty impressive overtake we just caught on screen.
Yeah, it seems like Higgins also still has to make a stop, as does Mathis, so I don't think just trying to hold on to the position as much as for as long as possible, but we are entering the closing stages of the race, really. We're an hour in. Yeah, we're just about, because we started around about 8 p.m. in game time, I believe it was, so we're about an hour in, and to see two cars still need to make the stop is definitely an interesting late stop strategy. I don't know how well that's going to play out, but it's definitely going to be interesting to watch to see what these drivers can do with it.
Yeah, and right here, this is a perfect example of the backmarkers kind of playing into the strategy a little bit. McCooley's going to get ahead of the backmarker there, and it's going to leave Piatek stuck behind him just a little bit. It's going to allow him to get a little bit of a gap here. He's pushed it up to a second and a half, actually, and is holding steady there, but, I mean, again, is going to get past the backmarker now. 1.5 seconds, like, that's a pretty solid, substantial gap here, especially with only 20 minutes left. So hopefully McCooley can hold on to that and secure himself into second position.
I'd say that also allows McCook a bit of an extra chance just to try and close that gap by a little bit, but otherwise the gap is growing a little bit to the top three. Egger still has to make his stop too. That's another thing worth noting. I'm sure by now he's going to have enough time to make the stop and still come out in first. I think that was his ultimate goal. I can imagine it's probably what I'd try and do, but I'm not very good at this game, so my strategies probably aren't do as I say, not as I do. Except don't do as I say, because again, I'm bad. Unlike
you're sounding like me trying to give advice to the likes of the pro level drivers. I'm here to kind of view and give a little commentary, and just I kind of let the drivers do their thing, as it is out of my wheelhouse, I guess. So we're following on with Cook, who's just also just continuing to lose pace. I mean, the last few laps here, he's been losing about 5 to 6 tenths from the back of the Jaguars ahead of him. Even when he has a good sector, that is trending downwards. So I think he's going to be pretty secure with himself in fourth position. But I mean, all things considered, that is an incredible position for him to be finishing in, considering where he started in this race on the grid. Some excellent overtakes were had, and I think fourth place is going to be a pretty respectable spot for him to finish. As was mentioned, Egger still hasn't pulled in for that mandatory pit stop. But I mean, he's had such incredible pace in that Bentley. I mean, he kind of just pulled off the front line and never saw anybody again, except for from behind them. As everybody was a backmarker to him at least once, if not twice at this point, with Brands Hatch being one of the shorter courses. So he's seeing a lot of traffic, but it's not anybody behind him.
No, it's also worth noting as well that it seems to. I don't know if obviously there is traffic as well to deal with. The numbers aren't everything, but Egger's last lap was a 1:24.4, which is half a second slower than McCauley's last lap. So could this be Egger's starting to struggle with the tires, maybe. Obviously, they have been running very hard for a long time now. I don't think Egger's ever let off to make the gap that he's got, but it doesn't seem as big as it once was.
I mean, kind of coming down to race strategy here. I mean, pulling into the pits. I mean, and it's gonna be a splash and dash from him, just to kind of finish off and satisfy the mandatory pit stop, and just kind of hold on to the lead that he's got. I mean, he's got a lot of cushion room here, but I mean, I guess anything could happen. We actually just recently saw the temperature tick down just a little bit as its track starting to slowly cool off a little bit down to 18°C. Out on the track there, and it maintained a very clear, clean race from the weather gods at least, so they don't have to worry about dealing with any of that extra strategy. As lately we've we've seen a few wet races happen, and that brings out a different side of these drivers.
I want to tell you, we have Wuss catching Moran as well in fighting for 11th place. Still quite a ways behind Matcha in 10th though. So that's another battle that's been going on for quite a long time now. So
Yeah,
I'm experiencing a little bit of lag on my end for the server. So, but it looks like the gap is still very, very close going through the back half of the course.
Yeah, pulling into the, close to the last 15 minutes, the last leg of this race here, people seem to be pretty shaken out to their positions. Not a whole lot of back and forth happening, except for this one right here. This is Dustin Wuss with the likes of Bohr behind him, who had an excellent pass on the other McLaren just a few laps ago. So
I'm sorry to interrupt.
Yep.
So I'm sorry to interrupt. We've got Rupert making a solid pass on Texera, fighting for 15th place, and we have Egger actually coming up behind to lap those guys as well. They're still quite close behind going into the run down to clearways. It's very interesting to see.
Yeah, the V12 Aston grabbing a little bit of sideways action coming out of that corner there, throwing some sparks from the back of him. And yeah, that's going to be them fighting over 15th position coming down the main straight, with the lights of Egger behind him coming up for the pass, I'm sure, soon. But oh, that's actually going to be the V12 going completely out onto the sand. And that's going to be a bit of a blow to him, losing a lot of ground there to Rupert there. Just looks like a complete miscalculation on turn 1. So yeah, that's going to be a tough blow.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of undulation on the track, and as it's starting to cool off, the cars are lightening up, but the tire wear is also accumulating. It's definitely going to be interesting to see how the drivers kind of took into that turn. Looks like Texera is also struggling a little bit, going through the turn to go onto the back half of the course, going down to Pelkman's Drop and down to Hawthorne. It looks like he lost a lot of time in the gravel going through turn 1 there.
Yeah, it's something we've seen before, and it can happen to anybody out on the course. You have a big mistake like that, you get a lot of sand and dirt on your tires, and you just start to lose that pace, and you can kind of see Texera kind of lose that rhythm a little bit. A lot of drivers like to talk about that. Kind of get into their rhythm. I mean, like you've seen Egger this entire race, just have that rhythm. And even when he starts to drop off just a little bit, as we're getting into the later parts of this this race, I mean, losing that pace a little bit, like that's another thing that they really need to be, aware of, that they're not pushing it too hard, that they're not gonna, throw the car off the course, obviously, because that would ruin their race. But you also just want to find that nice groove where you're, getting consistent lap times and holding on to your pace, as consistency is really what wins the race for them.
That's it. It's about pacing the car and pacing yourself, driving it as close to 100% as you can without going over the limit. Fighting for 18th place, we've got Banks and Jones going through, literally going through Graham Hill Corner now and heading towards Sterling. And Banks is very close. He was almost alongside going through Druids. Very, very possible we could see an overtaking opportunity coming up.
Yeah, this is going to be AJ Jones with Banks behind him. Actually, Banks down in 19th position. I mean, I think that he's dropped back a few spots since the pit stops happened, so that's kind of an interesting development. Banks looking for that opportunity to get around AJ ahead of him in the 3-2-1, but not quite having it on that corner. Trying to fight for this position with that kind of chrome finish on the Aston. We haven't seen AJ Jones on the stream yet today, but you know, especially with the lights coming down, that is kind of a bold choice from him.
Yeah, I must admit, I really was looking on that Aston Martin.
Yeah, so the drivers really shaking themselves out. McCooley again has just put some massive distance between him and the other Jaguar behind him, up to 4 seconds now. So I'm not sure what happened, or just McCooley just found a really nice groove or something, but he's just pulled away and has just secured himself into second position. So I believe you're looking at your podium finishes here. With Egger out in first position, just walked away with this race today, and he's going to be happy about that, pulling into the last 10 minutes here, with mostly just interactions between traffic, between the drivers, kind of shaking themselves out into comfortable positions, and are just going to nicely finish this race off as the track continues to cool down.
Yeah, it seems to be that everyone has settled into that rhythm. Obviously, everyone's been driving for a while now. Everyone's feeling that fatigue just a little bit. Obviously, this is about almost the equivalent of a stint in a 6-hour race with 1.5 hours. So it's definitely it's definitely interesting to sort of see how everyone is dealing with that. I'm looking down the field, and as I said, it seems like everyone has settled into a kind of groove. The drivers that were close, like the likes of Wurst and I think it's Mattia, they seem to be pulling a gap as well. But actually no, forgive me for saying that. It seems like for battle for ninth, Wurst is catching up to Mattia as well. It seems to be just a little bit behind, but Wurst seems to make a slight mistake going through Gleethop's there, lifts off, and has to counter steer that little bit of a slide, and that's just cost him a couple of tenths of a second, and has to make that gap up right up again. And Moren's not far behind either, so he's pushing himself right into the jaws of the Aston. So we could see fighting for that top 10 spot. It's gonna top 9 spot, even top 9 and 10. It's gonna be interesting to see where this ends up with just 10 minutes left to go.
Yeah, an interesting detail there is Matcha actually had a 128 versus Wust's 126.7 last lap. So I mean that is Wust grabbing a lot of pace off the back of Matcha to be catching up there. And you can see Morin in the distance there, if I'm not mistaken, went a little bit sideways and lost a little bit of ground on the back of them. So there was almost a three-way battle up for 9th position, but Morin's going to drop back just a little bit. But I think Steven Wust has got his sights locked on 9th position, and I think we have plenty of time for this to shake out into a little bit of a battle to fight his way up into a higher spot on the top 10. But again, just grabbing a little bit of dirt, and that's going to cost him time, and that's not something that you want to see. But the likes of Matcha has been just losing pace. I mean, like, just his lap time's been kind of slipping just a little bit. So I think Wust is going to be trying to capitalize that as they pull into this next lap and go into turn 1, tucked in from behind him and just ready to pounce and ready for that movement.
That's it. Just waiting to see what happens to the slipstream of the back going down Hawthorne Hill through Hawthorns and Westfield. It's going to be really interesting to see kind of what moves people can make. And it seems like it's slowing Wust up as well. It's backing Wust right into Moren, and Moren's caught right up to the back of the McLaren. So this is going to be a 3-car train going right through the fastest part of the circuit, coming up after this next after coming through Surtees. It's going to be a 3-car train going down Paddock Hill and Pilgrim's Drop, and it seems to me that Wust is trying just to kind of stick to the back of the other McLaren and find a way through. I think I'm right in saying as well that Match is in the older McLaren as well. He's in the I can't remember the model. I think it's the MP4 rather than the 720S. So interesting note. It's the first time I've seen those cars around here.
Yeah, actually, that's a nice detail to pick up on. I was kind of noticing the shape was just a little bit different, but I couldn't quite confirm as we've been bouncing around quite a bit on the stream here. But yeah, Wuss is just really tucked in, but this is Morin from behind in the Aston, also trying to get involved in this little scrap here, and this is going to be a three-way battle for this position, and could shake out to something coming into the next lap as that's... okay, so nothing too serious there, but what's keeping up the pressure coming into turn 1, and Morin from behind is going to be doing his part as well, so this could shake out to some position changes pretty quickly here.
Yeah, they are really, really catching up with each other going through paddock. It's also a very, very tight turn. Oh, I'm loving the helicopter shot as well. You can really see just how dark it's getting compared to when we first started. I would also make a note, Higgins has picked up a stop-go penalty that he's currently serving of 30 seconds. So I'm not too sure what happened there. We're so intrigued in the battle for 9th that we kind of missed that. But it's also of note. So I think Rupert is going to... Yeah, Rupert is definitely going to... He has just passed through the pit lane. But no, this battle is probably the thing to be watching at the moment.
Yeah, Higgins looked like that was speeding in the pit lane, actually. He was pulling in for a very late pit stop, you know, last 7 minutes, and just did not quite flick that limiter on in time, which is you know, just one of those things that happens. You know, it's not something that you ever want to see, especially on in a sprint race like this. You know, that's going to cost him a lot of positions and throw him down into the bottom 20. So, you know, not something that you want to see from Higgins, but, you know, he's got that cleared and he's going to get what position he can. But we are currently on board with this, and that's going to be Morin swinging up the inside, taking out both of them in that pass. That was Morin just capitalizing on it.